As we reach the end of our series on starting a new airline and our journey draws to a close, let's take a look back on our travels and reflect on the key moments we've discussed. Our 12-part series examining the crucial waypoints when starting your airline has landed, and we'll soon be shutting our engines down as we reach our allocated parking stand. It has been a discovery of highs and lows and twists and turns. From carrying out the most bureaucratic administrative functions to the joys of throwing your launch party and watching your first revenue flight take to the air, we've taken a quick look into what is involved at every significant stage of the process. Remember, as you look back on the series, every part of which you can find in our dedicated series directory, you must remember that this series is just a snapshot of the critical components that the process of starting your airline entails. The series is not intended as an all-inclusive bells and braces directory of the process, nor would it be possible for it to be so. So many variables are involved that covering every scenario in just 12 short parts would be impossible. Yet, we hope that you have learned something along the way, whether that something is a minor technicality that you might not have previously considered, to one of the more nuanced practices of the airline industry that you may not have heard of. As we departed our point of origin with nothing more than an idea and perhaps the twinkling of the excitement of starting a new airline back in Part 1, we walked through what to expect from the series. We were presented with the idea that there is no straight line linking the start of the journey and setting up an airline to the end, although throughout the last 11 parts we have tried to connect as many parts of the chain as possible. Through Part 2, we developed a credible business plan, putting all of our ideas down and preparing to present them to anyone in the outside world that may be interested. Starting an airline is a big decision and is a project that could quickly take over your life. The process can be rewarding, enjoyable, and hopefully profitable too. But it can also be frustrating, fraught with challenges, and the next setback will always remain just around the next corner. We examined the do's and the don'ts when creating your airline model and noted vital points to watch out for, good and not so good. In Part 3, we took a closer look at the options for financing a new airline and the sources of where funding might be found. In Part 4, we took on the complicated and intricate process of planning your new airline's infrastructure, building the framework or skeleton if you will, allowing for the flesh to be applied as you visited the later chapters of the series. As we reached Part 5, we finally got around to talking planes and how you might go about acquiring some of your own. While you may have thought that this significant milestone might have been featured much earlier on in the journey, you'll hopefully have discovered that, as mentioned in Part 1, starting an airline takes a great deal more than just getting a plane, covering it in a smart-looking paint job and declaring yourself open for business. Reaching the midpoint of our journey in Part 6, we took a closer look at what documentation and certification are needed to start an airline and operate it legally and safely. While possibly the least exciting part of the process, full of dry-sounding terminology and bereft of any excitement to come as and when your airline finally launches, Part 6 was a step-by-step walkthrough of the administrative hoops one has to jump through if one wishes to start a new airline operation. Parts 7 and 8 may be the point at which you first felt things truly started to come together and see how all the dots up to that point begin to join together. In Part 7, we discussed passenger experience, from the classes of travel you might offer on board to the types of wine you'll provide with meal service. This part highlighted your passengers' experience, both on the ground and in the air. Part 8 examined the importance of securing reliable support services for your airline. Without these, your aircraft will remain static on the ground, unable to perform the task they were acquired for. We investigated what additional services you might require to keep your fleet in the air, carrying passengers and/or cargo, ultimately earning your airline revenue, the lifeblood for any airline operator. As we reached Parts 9 and 10, we began our descent towards our destination and carried out our pre-landing checks. In Part 9, we ran through the importance of having a robust, attractive and highly strategic marketing plan to attract new customers to your airline and persuade those that might not have flown with you before to consider doing so. In Part 10, with aircraft, certification and much more of your infrastructure sorted, the final parts of the puzzle to starting an airline still need to be fitted. We turned our attention to recruiting and maintaining adequate levels of suitably experienced and trained staff for your nascent carrier to function as an airline and a business. As we made our final approach and landing in our most recent episode, Part 11, we finally saw the key elements come together in a show of lights, smoke and confetti. With as much razzmatazz and eye-catching imagery as possible to muster for the internet and the age of social media, we finally launched our airline and its branding to the world and operated our inaugural flight. And here we are, Part 12 already. What started as an odyssey of discovery has been like most flights. We set off into the blue skies above with a route plan. We followed that plan, making adjustments for turbulence or stormy weather making the way, and our airline is now sitting quietly at the gate, cleaned, refueled, and waiting to take on its next set of passengers and do it all over again. Once your airline is up and running, you have almost unlimited options for what you might choose to do with it. You should sit back and let the airline develop organically, building a loyal customer base on a limited route network. But conversely, you might decide that growth will lead to a critical mass where the airline needs to be to sustain itself in the future. After all, you are likely to have substantial startup costs that need to be covered, and the desire to pay those off and start earning profit may be too alluring a proposition to ignore. However, it would be best never to forget that the airline business's history is littered with failures. From the very most minor carriers flying a single aircraft on just one route, right to the other end of the spectrum with national carriers failing, leaving thousands of passengers stranded, making thousands of staff unemployed overnight, and leaving a trail of debt behind. There has always been a propensity or desire for new airlines to grow. It has only been in more recent times that more cautious approaches to development have been adopted, but even that cannot guarantee ultimate success. As we examined in Part 11, the airline industry is fickle and vulnerable. It often is the first industry sector that suffers whenever global events conspire against travel and economic growth. This is the case repeatedly, and it would be foolhardy and arrogant to think this will be any different in future years. When running an airline, you must consider all the options all of the time. There will be times when real opportunities for growth present themselves, and it would be reckless not to take advantage of them. At other times, it may be wise to take a step back, pause for thought, and resist the temptation to grow at that point. Again, no textbook tells you how to make such decisions. You'll rely on your experience and others in the industry to lead you down the right path. The gut feeling will have a part to play. After all, it'll be gut feelings that probably led you to start your airline in the first place. From the outset, you'll have decided what airline you wish yours to be. If the model you choose still fits in the marketplace in which it operates, stay true to that strategy. Resisting the temptation to reinvent the airline or its offering will avert the need to remarket a different message to your customer base. Human beings are habitual after all. The most successful business is where customers know what to expect and have that expectation delivered upon time after time. Only make tweaks where necessary for a competitive edge or where refreshes of product or service are vital for your airline to stay in the game and keep up with the market. Unless crucial to the survival of your airline, never make changes that dilute your product offering or diminish your brand. Should you do so, you'd be taking backward steps, making the ground further to catch up on in the future, and that much harder for your airline to regain lost market territory. Always strive to deliver on passengers' expectations and even exceed them whenever and wherever possible. Customer satisfaction levels, online trip reviews, and industry recognition are all things that can easily get forgotten about during the cut and thrust of running an airline. Yet these things matter. A string of poor reviews can set a chain reaction that can turn a trickle into a stream. It would be best if you always strived for your airline to be the best model of itself that it can be. Complacency can lead to shortcuts, and in turn that can lead to dissatisfied customers, falling ticket revenues, and increasingly empty planes. If losses start to snowball, adjust your model to arrest the decline. After all, in a ruthless industry where nothing comes cheap, a slight loss today can soon escalate into a much more significant loss tomorrow. Constant market analysis and rechecking that your airline remains relevant will also aid in keeping your brand in the public domain, a commodity that people continue to desire long after the fanfare of the first flight, the first month of operations, or even the first year has subdued. Lastly, use everything you've learned in the startup process to benefit your airline in the future. The experience you've gained will be invaluable and should never be forgotten. Using the knowledge you've acquired both in the early stages of your airline's development, as well as that which you and your team learn every day your fleet takes to the air, means it should be fitter, stronger, and better equipped to deal with the pitfalls that running an airline can throw at you. After all, no one ever said running an airline would be easy, and if they did, they were lying. It will have taken a tremendous amount of work to get this far. Your efforts and those of your team over many months, if not years, have seen you achieve a great accomplishment. Starting an airline is not for the faint-hearted and can be incredibly stressful. However, that must not take away from the fact that such an achievement should also be immensely gratifying. To take a simple idea from nothing to flying an aircraft worth millions of dollars around the sky, packed with perhaps hundreds of people paying you to do this safely and on time, should not be downplayed. Your ambitions, resilience, and efforts deserve recognition by everyone, but most of all, by you. You should be proud of what you've achieved, but more than that, hopefully, engaging with the whole process and sharing the experience with others will hopefully have made you smile too, and more than once. Be proud, but not too ambitious. Be grateful, but not complacent. But most of all, remain safe, true to the aspirations that you first started with, and keep delivering on your promises. In summary, only some have the vision to create an airline, the drive to take that vision forward, and the ambition to make that dream come alive and become a reality. Anyone who even tries to do so probably deserves an award. So, as this epic adventure finally draws to a close, and as we sign off one last time, we shall end this series as we first started it, relying on a phrase that your passengers will often hear as they travel around your network in the years to come. Welcome to our destination. We hope that you've enjoyed your journey with Simple Flying, and wherever you are heading from here, we wish you a safe and pleasant onward journey. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.